Hey, so ARMS. Let's talk about it for a little bit.
Alright, so before we get into today's video, guys, I just want to go out of my way and say this right now. Please don't crucify me for anything I'm going to say in this video. I beg of you, okay? If there's any points that you personally don't agree with, like in the video, please let me know in the comments down below, and I'll try to do my best to explain it further in the comments, so that there isn't like any sort of misconceptions or whatever. With that being said, go ahead and proceed on with the video. A few of the points that I wanted to discuss this video were the lack of a strong offline infrastructure, how appealing ARMS is to the masses as a spectator esport, the ARMS community in North America, and generally just the overall appeal of ARMS. The offline infrastructure for ARMS is a pretty weak one. Not sure exactly why the game is like this, but if you've been following the game for a while, you would know that it's mainly due to two reasons. A, it's because the game has a strong lack of locals, and B, it was mainly because any of the tournaments that we did receive were built in the realm of Wi-Fi. As for how the game got banished to the realm of Wi-Fi, it was mostly a direct result of the game's very young player base. Back in the day, people were either A, just too young to make it out to locals, or just had too much work either in college or at an actual job, or B, they just simply didn't want to leave their house to go play some video game, you know what I'm saying? It's just life, what can I say? See, back in the early days of the game's life, and I'm talking like early, like 2017 kind of early, offline tournaments as a whole were pretty scarce. Sure, there were a couple of 2GG tournaments here and there, but the ones that really like took off were definitely Wednesday Night Fights and SCL ARMS, to name a couple of local scenes that definitely like helped to push ARMS a lot more, like as a community. You know, I remember way back when Wednesday Night Fights would have like these pretty sizable prizes for winning the ARMS brackets back then. You know, they'll have stuff like not just like prize money. I remember like one of them was about $300 last I checked. Heck, they would even give away stuff like fight sticks, maybe a couple headsets, you know, fun stuff like that. Now, as for how the online scene was doing back then, well, see, this was back when it was starting to reach its prime, but it didn't quite peak until like 2018. That's when things really began to take off for the online scene. Back in the day, we used to have a couple scrims tournaments, you know, like Mega League Monday, Fight Club, anyone remember those? Nowadays, for online tournaments, we have stuff like Champions of the Era, for example, which had to start way back in 2018. I think it was around the summer that it began. Yeah, it was actually around the summer. I remember Smash and Splash. That's when the first online that era ever held. And of course, for the Mega League Monday replacement, we have Scrap Star Series, which covers both North America, Europe, and South American brackets. When on like the peak, they'll get like about 15, maybe 20 signups, depending on how good the day was. Yeah, I know those weren't exactly the biggest numbers or anything, but for an online weekly, that was pretty decent numbers. Now fast forward on to 2019, and things have taken a drastic turn for the worse. So you know Champions of the Era, right? The tournament that I mentioned earlier? Guess how many entrants that the most recent edition had as of the making of this video? 3. There were 3 entrants in the most recent Champions of the Eras. Count them, 3. Those are terrible numbers. When you look at it, you just think to yourself, what happened? How I got to this point is, honestly, I really have no idea, like, what happened. It's honestly kind of surprising. Well, okay, one of my main guesses might be that it's final season and people simply just don't have the time to play the game, but who knows, really? Now probably would be the perfect time to segue over into the appeal of the game as an esport overall. So how exactly does ARMS fare among the masses? Well, pretty well actually. It definitely does have its fans in terms of being a competitive game, and it can be pretty hype in some scenarios. But here's the catch. If you're not someone who's actually like really well versed in the game and whatnot, it can be a fairly boring game to watch if you're not actually that deep into it. Now, keep in mind, I'm not exactly trying to rag on the game when I say this. I'm just personally saying that from a competitor standpoint, I think that it's a lot more fun to watch if you're actually well versed in the game. Because if you don't really have too much experience with the game, or if you just don't really know exactly what's going on, you might just find yourself being pretty confused. You might just be going, what? What's going on? What is the appeal to this? Again, it's nothing completely unnatural. It's actually somewhat common. Because remember, every little competitive game has its own little niche that it likes to fit into, and ARMS is no exception to this rule. So it makes sense that not everyone would be too enthralled with it. It just happens, you know, to be a new IP. It wasn't like the most fleshed out or very flashy game to watch, something like Dragon Ball FighterZ or Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. It's not like those games exactly, but it's Still definitely got its own little niche, is what I'm trying to say. Because, you know, I've been, like, seeing a lot in the Twitch chat that some people were actually pretty impressed with the game at times. They were saying, oh, hey, you know, ARMS is actually kind of low-key hype. So, yeah, with that in mind, it definitely does showcase that the game definitely does have potential to become a really impressive spectator esport. In my eyes, at least. Now, shall we move on to what I believe to be, by far, the most crucial portion of this little video. And this is the part where we're going to be taking a look over at the North American ARMS community. Now, right off the bat, I want to say that not everyone in the North American ARMS community is going to be like what I am about to look into, for example. I know there's plenty of people in North America, in the community and stuff, that aren't exactly like in the little competitive ecosystem that we have going on in like the Discord and stuff like that. Just keep that in mind. Now, one thing needs to be said before we move on to the topic at hand. I will not be naming any names of any individuals that have expressed any of the behaviors that I will be discussing in this video. This is simply going to be me overviewing what I've personally been seeing in the community, and as such, just telling all of you lovely viewers out there all about these people. Now, right off the bat, I'm just gonna go ahead and start off with what I believe to probably be the most damaging aspect of what the North American ARMS community could be doing for itself, and that is the lack of an engaging social media presence. Now, this point mainly relates over to the professional players in ARMS, and this is something that I think is something that they personally need to work on in terms of social media presence, because whenever I would look on their Twitter, for example, I would only see a couple posts basically being nothing but just a bunch of retweets. Maybe at best you'd see like probably like 1 or 2 posts relating to the game. Barely any posts about them going to tournaments, going on hiatus, or anything like that, in any sort of real capacity. The only place you see them talking about that kind of stuff is probably on like Discord or something. Now, that's not to say that you wouldn't see this sort of activity on their Twitter feeds at all. In fact, you would see it like maybe once or twice, a couple times, but that's basically it. You see it like just a couple times and then probably never again after that. Now, this somewhat confuses me because, well, it's basically your job to be playing ARMS, or at least something that you actually have a really huge passion for. So what I'm trying to get at is, bro, why aren't you marketing yourself more? If you had just like made a couple tweets here and there talking about the game's meta, how you may be feeling about it sometimes, or heck, just anything in general on social media would be appreciated, because, you know, I see like a lot of these accounts have like over 100 followers, and seeing their Twitter contents, I honestly just don't really see how they got those sort of numbers, in all brutal honesty. Which is another thing I kind of wanted to touch on, is that not a lot of the professional players really have what you might call a personality. They're all just kind of boring, sort of like the same cookie cutter, oh hey, I'm the best, look at me. And it's kind of gets kind of boring here and there, you know. It kind of makes watching this game on a professional level, I mean, it makes it kind of a slog. Once again, this doesn't mean that all professional players are like this, it just means that most of them are, is what I mean. So please, to any professional players watching this, I implore you, please start tweeting more on Twitter, start tweeting more about how you're feeling, how you're doing with the game, you know, just like start making up a name for yourself, you know, start marketing yourself. And yes, this also does sort of lean into another topic that I wanted to discuss, which was the inactivity part. Now, inactivity in the game has, you know, ARMS has always had a bit of a somewhat problem with inactivity, but I have never seen it get to this much of a problem. It's honestly gotten to the point where even party matches I've had trouble finding. It's really gotten to that bad of a state where freaking party matches. I'm having trouble finding party matches. That's a problem. Oh, okay. Sorry, getting a bit ahead of myself. It's just, back in the day, you know, it wasn't really that difficult to find something as simple as a party match. It's just, man, I remember the day when you used to be able to just like press the party match button and you'd like find it instantly, man. It's crazy to think that we've gotten to the point where it's like a rare. It used to be a rarity to the point where you would even like get into an empty party match. It would be like 1 out of 100 half the time. And it's not even really just a problem with the game itself, it's also on social media, as mentioned previously, and the Discord servers, which, again, seem pretty weird. Because here you have the North American community complaining about, oh, we need more locals, oh, we need more offline events, yet, in general, no one's really talking enough about it as much as it should be talked about, and I think that, again, is another pretty big issue. And I'm not trying to shame anyone that's trying to stay more on the quiet side because they don't feel like getting into all the drama, but at the same time, it does feel a bit like
no one really cares in all honesty because of just the huge amount of silence that's been going on. Which I know is definitely not the case. People do legitimately care. It's just it's hard to see that people care when no one is talking about it.
But inactivity wasn't just the only problem that I had with the North American community, and this is something that I've been seeing a lot of other people talk about as well, is that there's been a sudden spike in a bit of toxicity lately, and I'm not going to be naming any names in this video, let's just get that out of the way right now. I will not be naming any names of any sort of individuals or discussing any specific drama. All I'm going to be saying in this video is that there has been a sudden surge in toxicity in the community, and it hasn't been doing us any favors. One of the best examples I think I can think of is whenever someone would try to make a joke post, for example, people would get super angry at a specific joke post. Again, there was this one, I'm not going to be naming any names, but there was this one joke post that got it basically blew up, 1k likes, something like that. It got so much flack from most of the people in the community. Oh my god, you should have seen it, dude. It was crazy. Now, don't get me wrong, I do understand defending something that you absolutely believe in, like ARMS for example, but at the same time, when you look at something that's clearly a joke, I don't think the best thing to do in this case would be to go out of your way to say how, oh, the game isn't actually like that, the community is perfectly fine, oh no, the game isn't like that, I don't understand why people keep attacking ARMS. Honestly, this sort of behavior comes across as very immature and almost kind of petty in a way, which, come on y'all, I know you can do better than that. You shouldn't be falling for what's obviously a joke post, and then proclaiming why the game is underrated when meanwhile the person writing that probably doesn't even actually seriously believe that, it's probably just doing it just to make a joke. So yeah, that's going to do it for the State of Arms video, guys. I think this one was honestly one that I didn't want to make, but it was something that I think actually need to be said. A lot of the points I brought up, a lot of people probably aren't going to agree with, but hey, that's perfectly okay. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments below, and as always, keep it real. Peace.